Hi and welcome to 5.6 Innovation. This is the exclusively HL topic within topic 5 Operations Management, and it's going between 6:11 to 7:31. Innovation sort of stands by itself a little bit within this topic. It doesn't sort of tie too much onto other things, but knowing it does help with 5.7. I've got some notes here for you just to make it for a quick read if you don't have access to a textbook or anything else. Have a read through the stuff that's here. There's a good link between having your intellectual property and then how it links with R&D and then getting into your products with your marketing. And also, have you've got a good patented system, linking back to your job, batch, mass and flow to keep your production methods your own and not getting them copied by anybody else. Have a read through and we'll make a start onto the learning outcomes. Alright, the big things for us here: can you explain the importance of R&D for a business? So linking this onto their growth. This is going to be a 4-mark question, so could you define R&D, give a case reference, and then importance or important nature to the businesses? I was going to say importance is there, doesn't really sound, kind of stupid, yeah. Explain the role and importance of intellectual property. Note with these ones, this is like a double banger question. So when you explain the role, like why is it actually there for, like what's this purpose, and the importance, why do you have to have it? So defining IPR, giving a case reference, and then 2 either roles, or 1 role and 1 importance, or 2 importances. I just said it, didn't I? Why it's important. Anyway, we'll keep going. And lastly, this is like the 6-mark question. This is the kind of thing they might throw at you, say at the end of paper 1 in part C. What actually affects innovation? So what causes innovation to grow or decrease, and giving a strength and weakness for that one. Today it's just 100% declarative. There's no special skills to be shown, and I've got 2 different classifying things in here because the topic's a bit broad, but I put it just into one PowerPoint to make it nice and easy for you. Alright, the key terms I'm going to be using today for innovation: R&D, so it's research and development. And this is usually the first part of the product life cycle, just so we're not actually making sales yet. And the key bit is using this word here, prototype. So the idea is you're developing a prototype that hasn't yet become a product, or you're testing an older product to make it into a newer product later on. With your IPR, intellectual property rights, the idea is that if you've made a prototype, or you've got an idea, or you've got a really kick-ass product, that you want to protect it and make it your own, so other people can't claim ownership or copyright it or trademark it for something that you've worked hard on and you've developed to finally get it onto the market in the product life cycle to start making some money. Patents, the key part here is that you're an exclusive producer. I'm the only one that can make this unless you have permission for me to go and make it. If you go and make it, I claim patent infringement and I sue you for compensation, or an infringement notice to stop you from producing it altogether. Apple's did a whole bunch of these ones with Samsung, saying that you've taken some of our patents and you've made things that we are the exclusive producer of doing it, like the old bizarre rounded corners part. Copyrights is all about exclusive ownership, so we own this. And think about in the music industry, you can't say I control all music made by guitars, but you can say the music that was made on the guitar is mine. So if you want to be able to use my song, you have to ask me for exclusive permission to go and do it, and then pay me royalties as a result. You have the right to restrict others, to say you can't use that unless you get my permission, and with my permission often comes the idea of paying a royalty fee. Lastly is trademarks, and trademarks you might see as a little sort of TM next to some of the names. If you think of the wrestling, even John Cena and The Big Show, their names are trademarked. They've built them up into such a brand and such a well-known name that you can't use their name in another promotion campaign. It also goes into logos. So if you think about the Xbox logo, you can't use that into another business, or even any sort of signs that go up with different shapes and the way logos are put in. You can't copy any of those as well because they're trademarked and they're trying to exclusively say, we developed this, not you, and this is our way of distinction to differentiate us from other brands. Alright, we'll get straight into it now. I've got this really good video for you. It's I'm just going to put this here for you to go through. It's kind of dull, but it really puts all of the ideas into all of the context. I won't show it to you now, just again, funnily enough, for copyright reasons. But if you want to go through intellectual property rights, you want one that's about 4 minutes 40, and I've got the tiny URL if you just want to type that in if you can't, if this doesn't seem to work. Highly recommend go have a look before you start getting into this, and so many things will make a lot more sense. Alright, on here, the importance of R&D to a business is very critical. It can be used when you're developing your prototypes before they get onto the market, or at the end of it. So if you realize your product's going to start dying off because it's been oversaturated, how do you get the extension strategy to come back up? So you can do a lot of R&D to make sure you can reclaim that market share that had been lost through oversaturation. Usually it's really important to do with strong competition, and also particularly for the medical industries when they're doing a lot of their drugs and their medicines, that if it goes out into the market and people take them and they die, they'll get sued because it's dangerous. This is really big into the product development aspect on Ansoff's matrix. So if you're going to go into an existing market with a new product, you need to make sure you've done a lot of R&D to make sure that product will have a strong start and it will last a long time over the product life cycle. If you don't do the R&D, you might have a really short one. People quickly work out how to copy it, and as soon as it comes out of its patent, or it comes, well, the information is just basically copied and pirated, you're going to have a problem trying to reclaim it back because the product was really easy to be copied because it didn't have a lot of safety mechanisms built into it by the R&D processes. So if you don't get your PLC right, your market share is going to go down. So if you don't do your R&D, it's going to impact on the brand. Brands that haven't had a lot of R&D attached to them often make it harder for them to differentiate and get the customer to repurchase because the competition's already taken the ideas and you're no longer differentiated as much as it used to be. Particularly with innovation with competitors. If Apple's not doing its R&D, Samsung certainly is. And if Samsung's not doing it, Apple certainly is doing their R&D. With these ones, R&D is critical to make sure you stay ahead of the competition, you keep your unique selling point, and you've differentiated yourselves from the strong brands and also the weak brands. This is particularly important when you're entering new markets as well. So if it goes into that sort of strategic business units part, if you go into a new product into a new market, if you go into an international market and if you haven't done your R&D, your language might be wrong, the sizing and the portion size might be wrong. If you want just a quick example, think about how the Big Mac was going into India and how the cow is considered sacred in Hinduism. So if they didn't take that into aspect, they could have pumped out lots of Big Macs, offended the local populace, and done a lot of errors in their branding and their marketing plans. What happens if you ignore R&D then? Well, you're just going to lose market share. Your competitors are doing it, so if you don't do it, it's going to be a real hassle. Also, the strong brand that's been built up, so maybe you had a really good cash cow, that starts to lose its market share and it starts to suddenly shift out, and this really strong brand that used to be really kick-ass and make lots of money now gets moved back. Hyundai and Daewoo, for instance, used to be considered quite a weak brand car because it wasn't considered with the quality. But Hyundai invested in their R&D, made their quality go up, and they made it very strong. Daewoo, in the other sense, though, didn't actually do that, and the branding of it within Australia, Europe, and America shifted out and was eroded very quickly. Also, it can be very demotivational for the skilled staff. If there's no investing in the long term and training the staff and giving them a chance to play with prototypes, your skilled staff can get very demotivated in your Maslow areas. Alright, have a look on here going through the different apples from the 3G, the 4G, and the 5. What do you think one of the quick strategies they could have done? What do you think the costs of doing this may have been? What would happen if Apple ignored this? And what do you think Samsung's response as a result of them doing this strong R&D? So it's just a way to get your brain to click through and have a look. Feel free to pause it now and have a go on your touch screen or your pad, and we'll go through it. Alright, with the end of the 3G, the end of the PLC strategy, they realized with the 4G as it came in, I'm going to call this, I know it sounds kind of stupid with the 4G, but this is the 4th generation version. One of the things they introduced was Suri to bring it in, and Suri was one of the big kicking ideas to bring the 3 into the 4. They also changed the sizing and the weight and the screen and everything else that went with it. Did it cost? Yeah, it certainly cost a lot of money to make it happen. So if you think about the product life cycle, the area down the bottom would have got a lot larger. But if Apple had ignored this, there would have been a lot of problems. What was Samsung's response? Well, they shifted the S2 when they made the S3 into a much more functional product. All the things that came in with the S3 was designed to counteract the growth of the Apple IV. May have done a great job, but if Samsung had just stayed with the S2 model with its sizing and screen and functionality, and with its processors, Apple would have shifted and lost some of its market share as well. So with the Apple IV here, what was their strategy to bring it in? Well, they decided to make the screen longer, make the screen a bit of stronger glass, and also bring in tying in with the cloud and making it more functional. Cost on this, again, time and money would have been quite huge, would have increased the product life cycle. That would have made some issues. If Apple had ignored this, there was a potential for the Samsung S3 to take some of their market share. What did Samsung do as a response? Well, it actually hastened the introduction of the S4. The S3 was only around maybe for potentially a year or so before the S4 was brought in quickly to combat it, because they realized that the Apple V that was coming in wasn't going to compete strongly enough. The S3 wasn't going to be much of a match for the Apple V. Alright, this one here is meant to be a bit tougher for you. It's a bit of a speculation thing. What do you think they're going to do with the Apple V? So like when they bring out the 5S. They've brought out a recent update, and this may seem a bit old if you're seeing it in the past, but they did go through, and when you shift up the screen, a lot of the quick functions down the bottom make it easier to get into into the iPhone to make functionality a lot better. What were the costs? Again, time and money, increased the R&D expenses on the product lifecycle as an extension strategy. If Apple had ignored this, the S4 may have grown and got quite strong. What's Samsung's response to this? Well, at this stage in the game, I haven't seen anything come out, but I'm guessing it might be the Qi power aspect, so you can recharge your phone without having to plug the cables in. I don't know right yet, I can't see into the future, but you might be able to look back now at the video and say, oh, this is what Samsung did. Alright, we'll jump on from here. What's the importance of IPR? Well, the importance of IPR is to protect your protect your prototype, all over the place. Protect your prototype. You've worked hard for it, you paid money for it, your skilled labor's been into it. You want to make sure that it's yours and no one else is taking it. So you do this through patents, copyrights, or trademarks. So with registered patents, I've got an example across here. This is like the United States of America one with a seal on it, and you can sort of see the diagrams where they have to spell out each of the individual little parts. So they can see each of the components and say, now this part here is very unique, this part's very unique, this part's very unique and different from another area. And this is like a car loading machine, I believe, for putting them into underground car parks. More importantly, it's to establish ownership. So if it goes to court and people want to argue over it, who is the judge going to rule in favour of? Ideally the person who owns the patent, and say this is ours and you have to pay compensation because you've been infringing on that patent and you haven't paid royalties or you haven't asked for exclusive use of this. You also get your copyright areas, and some of you may have seen this if you're a torrent or an ISO person. You may have seen a DMCA come through from your ISP. This is the way of the MPAA and the RIAA of trying to protect the copyrights of the movie and music industries. The key part here is you're trying to protect your market share. If they lose money to other areas, the money that may have been made by streaming sites and torrenting sites could have been made in the cinemas and could have been made through DVD sales. So it's trying to protect your market share by doing this. Lastly, with the trademarks, you notice there's like an R here for a registered trademark, or the TM as well. And this is also just to take away from knockoffs. So you may have seen the Seni or the Suni brands, that kind of thing, or the Apu, sort of different ways of doing it, where people have just taken the label or the logo and just changed around the lettering. If you ever get around China and India and Russia and so forth, finding the knockoff versions of each of the products isn't too hard to get, but it does affect the brand. There has been a shift, I know of, within China, where the idea of the Chanel brands and Yves Saint Laurent, if you walk around with a copied one, they can actually take away from the ones that have worked hard to make good quality, because people just go, well, is that a knockoff or is it a copy? Makes awkward conversations, take away from the brand, stops them from being differentiated. But more importantly, when the customer goes to repurchase, they're going to think twice. Do I want to do this? Given there are so many knockoffs out there, what are people going to think of me if I buy it? So it does affect the perception and the perception maps. Alright, so what are some of the factors affecting innovation? On here, what are some of the, why don't we innovate in a sense? Well, you've got step all the external pressures, pressures from the government, pressures from society, pressures from ethics and so forth, and also pressures from, say, technology. More importantly, just time and money. Do we have time to invest in R&D given the technology market's moving so quickly? Or do we have money set aside to pay for R&D given it doesn't get onto the market yet because the prototype is still below on the product life cycle and we aren't making money? Do we have time to put this aside? We may have so much of our gearing ratios stuffed that we just don't have money to put aside for it. In high-tech industries, particularly like medical, IT and mining, the costs are huge. They might spend billions of dollars trying to get out variations of ibuprofen or variations of some of the cancer drugs. Because of these high costs, they simply don't go out making some of the drugs, and they persist with brands and products that have worked in the past, but they may not innovate to make new ones. This affects innovation because of the cost. Some of the government and universities, basically the taxes are too high in some of the areas, or the government grants and subsidies to support things through scholarships. The government just isn't there and it's not helping. The government's going through austerity measures and they simply don't have money to spend on R&D. Where other governments do, so you have a shifting and move away, so the innovation in your home country may be shifted to somewhere else. Also, just straight competition. Some of the challenges that come through, the R&D just takes too long. So LG, for instance, rather than just doing the R&D, it's easier just to benchmark. Just copy what Apple's doing with your brands, and we'll do the same things as those. LG has done a lot of innovative products, but it looks like they're just playing catch-up with Samsung and Apple rather than being innovative and making their own. Nokia and Microsoft, the strategic alliance was very strong to make the new 820 and so on, but they seem to be playing catch-up again because their R&D isn't as strong as it could be. Alright, have a look on here and just go through and sort of tick where do you think it might be at roughly right now, and what do you think is sort of the best way of doing it? If they do this, what's some of the costs? So feel free to pause it now, maybe write some notes in or just tick the boxes, and we'll talk about it in a sec. Alright, with the 3D printers, the exclusive owners may have patented, and for the life of me I can't remember who it is. We'll just guess it's Epson that's done it. Epson might make a copyright on this, so if other brands want to copy the actual model, they say if you want to copy the specific ways of doing the Wi-Fi or some of the protocols, you have to pay us royalties. And the Epson may have a really strong name. They might call it the 3D giant kick-ass printer, and they'll put a TM on the end of that one. That's their way of protecting it. What are the costs? Cost of legal fees, cost of R&D to develop it, cost of also manufacturing the product to those high standards. With the electric car, so we might take the Tesla model for instance here, the Tesla guys, or Toyota when they're doing the hybrid with the Prius. They patent and say the way we've done the engine is ours, you have to pay us money, you can't make it without asking our permission. They might copyright it out and say, look, if you want to have a go at doing it, you have to pay us royalties. And they might trademark it, so the Prius is trademarked to Toyota. You can't call another car the Prius. Costs of doing this again, R&D, legal costs, and also the cost of setup. Anti-HIV drugs, so it might be Bayer or Pfizer, some of the big drug companies. They own the patent and they restrict other people from doing it. They have a copyright potentially on the way that it's produced and the ratios of the actual drug within the pills and tablets itself or the formula. And they might trademark it itself, so they might trademark the name of the actual the drug that's being made, such as Stop HIVX or whatever the brand might be called, and they put a TM or an R at the end of it to stop people from taking that really well-known brand and them using it as own variant as themselves. Again, the costs, legal, R&D, and setup as it goes through. Alright, I've got an exam-style question here for you, and you might notice on here they had this box which looks like, is it Bulbulgal? I'm not too sure. So I can't read the characters properly, my eyes are a bit funny on this one. They've put Arnold Schwarzenegger's face on this box of this professional wireless microphone system, but he wasn't asked to go about doing it. So we'll have a look about some of the questions. We've got 3 marks. Note with these ones it's 3 marks, so just one sentence rather than a case ref. and examine so one strength and one weakness to protect his image on these ones. Feel free to pause it now and we'll go through the question. Okay, a patent is giving exclusive producer rights to actually making the actual product. Copyright is exclusive distribution and ownership to the good that's been made or the prototype, and the trademark is the right to trade with that particular product name or logo or sign that's been attached to it. What's the most appropriate way for Arnold Schwarzenegger to protect his image? You would say on this one probably copywriting it. His image himself is copyrighted, or maybe even trademarked, and maybe his name as well as trademarked. You can't call another brand the Schwarzenegger brand without paying him royalties. In the case of this one here, his image was used on a box, so that would be an infringing copyright or infringing trademark if they'd used his name. What's the appropriate way to protect his image? To have really strong copyright laws and get his lawyers to send around maybe the DMCA notices if it's up on the internet, or copyright infringement notices. What's some of the costs of doing this? Well, the time and money of preparing it, and also the cost of paying the legal fees, which may be reimbursed at the end. But however, sometimes it doesn't work out too well with a lot of the knockoffs and piracy that's occurring. Overall, it's highly recommended that Arnold Schwarzenegger protects his image with as much as he can through copyrights and trademarks. If he doesn't go to do this sort of stuff, his face may appear on more products all around the world, endorsing stuff that he hasn't been paid for or stuff that may impact and damage his own brand. Alright, to finish off today, have a go at the worksheet in the description bar, have a go at your IB questions in the back of your textbook, read over the study notes. I've got two different variations to get I've only got one variation of this one, to give you some detailed notes about it. Do you reckon you can explain the importance of R&D? So define R&D with a case ref and give two impacts, or I almost did it again, didn't I? 2 reasons why it's important. And the role and importance of IPR for a business. So can you talk about copyrights, patents, and trademarks, and why they're important, and if you don't have them, what can happen? So define IPR, give a reference, and give 2 reasons why you have to protect it and the consequences if you don't. And lastly, what are some of the factors affecting innovation? So stepple, time, and money. And these things going about, how does this actually cause some problems? So it slows down if there's no government grants, it slows down if there's a high cost of some of the medicines, and it can also slow down when there's restrictive laws in place. However, this does make some good things, makes some innovation, also shares some of the technology around the world with different countries, but more importantly, it makes the brand stronger as they've invested in R&D and thought about better. So it saves the public maybe from injury from medicines. It also makes the brand stronger with its differentiation and cause that repurchase when they're picking between the competitions. That's it for me today, and that's all for 5.6, and I'll see you again in 5.7.